Cowabunga! Hello guys, episode 17, Daisy Dukes, Communists, and Police Commandos. Whoa.
Let's do this.
Hey guys, welcome back to Tactically Misguided. My name is Patrick.
And I'm Lobo.
Lobo.
I changed it up.
Ooh, I'm getting fucking spicy. Alright guys, so for this one, like Hunter said, it's episode 17. Hit me with the title again.
Daisy Dukes, Communists, and Police Commandos.
Ooh. I like Daisy Dukes, I like that part. Wait, which part's about Daisy Dukes?
Oh, we're gonna get there.
Okay, we're gonna get there.
You want to talk about some cool uniforms?
So for, is the General Lee driving around?
No.
Wait, did they turn the General Lee into a technical?
No.
God, that'd be fucking sick.
We are going to talk a little bit about our favorite topic, which is some armor. Well, it's kind of armor. It's actually the advent of MRAPs. This is like the first MRAPs.
Okay. So for this one, I'll be fucking honest. He's going to ask me a lot of questions, and I'm going to attempt to answer them. So we're going to change up the format here. This is completely outside my wheelhouse. I could help out in some of the other episodes to an extent with my limited base of knowledge of just our shit, not so much everybody else's. So this is going to be a lot on him, and I'm just going to answer mostly rhetorical questions. And let's go. Let's hit it.
All right.
Let's start it out. Because I can't pronounce like half of this shit either, and I just sound stupid when I do it.
So we're going to be covering a special operations unit called Kufut, which is Afrikaans, a language spoken in South Africa and certain parts of Namibia. It's basically a form of 600-year-old Dutch when they came down and colonized the... What's up?
Oh, okay. Where's Namibia?
Oh, Namibia. All right. Well... we're currently talking about the area that is in South Africa. And the main countries that we're going to be talking about is Namibia, which is just on the west side of Africa, above South Africa, and it's sandwiched between Angola and South Africa.
Okay.
And it used to be called Southwest Africa.
Oh, yeah. That doesn't exist.
It doesn't anymore. Now it's Namibia.
You said that earlier, and I really thought it was something for a second.
So Kufut literally translates to crowbar. And this unit is a counterinsurgency unit, and it was essentially a proxy war within a proxy war. It was South African allied white minority government fighting against communists and communist insurgents. But in the bigger picture, it was the West versus communism.
And we love a good love story about fucking up commies.
I fucking hate commies.
And note for book here, after I was looking at the analytics of like who's watching this, we have some Russian viewers.
We do.
Yeah, we do. 4% is Russian, so I wonder who that is.
I like Russia. I like the Russian people. I don't like your military.
I don't like that you're communist, but
I mean, I love borscht.
What's borscht?
It's a beet soup. All right.
Beating in soup. Okay.
We'll get into it. So the nitty gritty of this is, and I'm skipping a lot of history, but the area we're talking about is mostly desert. There's very little in the way of natural terrain. It's mainly flat, and it's kind of reminds me a lot of like parts of Arizona.
Yeah. Like New Mexico. There's a stretch on either Highway 10 or 40 when you're going through basically like the desert part of California through New Mexico and Arizona into Texas, northern Texas. That shit's all fucking desert and flat. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
That's what it looks like. The coast, it has a large coastline, but everything's dead. There's nothing that grows there. There's diamonds. That becomes important because
blood diamonds.
So we'll talk real fast. In the 1600s, the local population was mainly what were called the Nama and Herero people. They were indigenous black Africans that lived in the area. In the 1600s, Bantu-speaking people moved south, so you had Africans colonizing Africans, the Ovambo. And the Ovambo are their own distinct ethnic group. So then white people showed up. and they were mostly Germans. Germans. World War One. Well, let me back up just a second. There was also the first, what we would consider, state-sponsored genocide in modern history. A lot of Herero and Nama people were just wiped out. Of a population of 100,000, 80,000 were killed.
Damn.
Yeah, and it was Germany's first genocide. A lot of the people that did that were actually architects in the genocide for the Holocaust.
Ah.
Yep.
Well, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Oh my God. So the Namibian genocide occurred under German rule. World War I happened. Who won World War I?
Definitely not them.
Definitely not the Germans.
The Allies.
The Allies. So the fucking to the winners go the spoils. The British annexed it. Okay, so now South Africa and Southwest Africa are British protectorates. We're going to fast forward a little bit to the 1960s. At this time, South Africa is its own country. And we know the apartheid government, they were on the west side of the aisle when it came to the Cold War. Southwest Africa, Namibia now, was a protectorate. Mm-hmm. So they technically didn't have government, what you would consider an independent sovereign government. That also includes law enforcement and the military. Mm-hmm. So the South African government basically lauded and took control of this area. So you have a bunch of mostly Dutch, ethnically Dutch. They're called Afrikaners. And then you had some English that were still left over. And then in Namibia, you had white Germans, mainly. There were some smatterings of other ethnic groups. For that main part of the story, that's the white people down there. In Namibia, I'm going to say Namibia because I don't want to say Southwest Africa every time. Plus, it's gone. Namibia was mostly Ovambo, and there was some Herero and Nama. But the bulk of the population that was involved in this counterinsurgency, the population itself were Ovambo. So the Namib Desert was kind of desolate, and they had bush people that were semi-nomadic, pastoral nomadic, so they kind of moved around and grew stuff. This is also where Bear Grylls in that episode, he kills a porcupine with like the bush people. That's Namibia.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I never saw that episode. I just wanted to be cool.
So this is an interesting episode because we both know counterinsurgency. It's kind of become a bread and butter of the U.S. military.
Ever since what?
Vietnam. We started in Vietnam, but I would say like Central America. We were also major one was Vietnam.
Yeah.
And then Iraq and Afghanistan.
And then our time frame.
Our track record wasn't so good. When you look at it for casualty figures, the U.S. did pretty good for not so much in Vietnam, but yeah.
All that and losing ground constantly too. It's kind of hard to go from. We've had that conversation before. It's kind of hard to go from conventional warfare or being a conventional warring power to fighting fucking guerrillas. Because you could take a plot of land, clear it, keep pushing, moving on, and then that shit's gonna be taken over again in like 5 seconds.
Exactly. Well, that happens when the population's not on your side. Yeah. In this instance, the Ovambo were basically an 80-20 split. 80% of their population was anti-communist, about 20% were communist. And it showed to the population that most of the educated people, they are a Protestant entity. Most of them are actually Lutherans. They were converted by missionaries, but the majority of their population did not want communism. The communists mainly went to the very poor rural villages and recruited people that were easy to influence, like most communists do, like on college campuses. Oh, when we're talking about dumb people, what do you call a Marine with the IQ of 100?
I don't know, Hunter. What do you call them?
A platoon. So we're going to be talking about, now that we set the stage, the government of Namibia was essentially white minority rule. It was a apartheid state. They actually weren't near as bad as South Africa. So the unit I'm going to be talking about was a mixed race unit. So it wasn't all white or all black. It had mostly white commanders And then there were African commanders, or I'm going to say black commanders. Then they had constables. So they had officers and constables because they couldn't technically call them soldiers. So the Kufut was actually patterned off of the Seal of Scouts. So the tracking, that badass tracking and fire force tactics that they used in Rhodesia, they took a lot of those tactics and brought them over. It's something that we have been remiss in the U.S. military. If a unit does really cool shit, Americans are always like, well, we do it better. There are a lot of counterterrorism units out there. Like you see the Israelis, they have an amazing counterterrorism.
Israelis are good at a lot of shit.
Oh.
Side note, join the Rhodesian army. Be men among men.
Become a man amongst men. All right, so what we have now is we speed forward to the 1960s, and we have a communist insurgency. So I told you it was sandwiched between Angola and South Africa. South Africa is an apartheid state. It was originally Dutch, then British, and then Namibia was German, now British, and then there's Angola that's above it. Angola was a Portuguese territory, and Angola was like Angola and Mozambique, another country in Africa, was essentially the Portuguese Vietnam. It actually wound up toppling their government in what they called the Carnation Revolution. That's when Portugal basically said, you guys are now free. Now, do you think it's a bad idea to have people that have never had a functioning government and that are armed to the teeth to just take over everything from finances to the economy to the healthcare system to policing?
I feel like that's a genius idea.
It's a genius. But what happens if I told you they were communist?
It's a terrible idea.
It's a terrible idea.
Backtrack.
So,
fucking rewind.
We fucked up. Go back. So, essentially, what happened is the Portuguese left, and Angola wound up fighting in its own brutal ass civil war between several different factions, which was the MPLA, the FNLA, and UNITA. However, those are not the worst terrorist acronyms. What's the worst terrorist acronym you've ever heard?
NATO?
NATO. This one is called PLAN, the People's Liberation Army of Namibia. So the PLAN are essentially, they were offshoots of SWAPO, which is the Southwest African People's Organization, not to be confused with SWAPO, which was the Southwest African Police. So we have communists that are coming over. These guys are actually being trained, funded, and equipped by the Soviet Union and China, East Germany, but most importantly, what's another communist country that nobody talks about? They're still around today. Will Smith saying about their large expat population in Florida.
Cuba. Good old Cuba.
There's a joke. Cuba is the largest country in the world. Why is it the largest country in the world?
Oh, because it's everywhere.
Because they have soldiers buried in every corner of the earth.
I've heard.
Love the Cuban people. Fucking hate Cuba.
Also hate Little Havana in Miami.
Yeah.
You just stop trying to take over shit, and then just plant your flag and say it's fucking Cuba.
Well, they also play really shitty music too.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Their food's great though, and their fucking coffee.
Amazing, amazeballs. Cubano, the Americano. Oh my God, fucking love it.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Is that like Starbucks?
So this unit size is essentially, there's about 45 people in it. So you had about 4 officers, and then you had 40 constables.
That's about 4 too many for the officers.
Yep. Well, the initial formation of it is they used South African police officers that were trained with their security branches for task force in South Africa that were fighting insurgents for the ANC, the African National Congress, which was a communist proxy. I don't care how much you love Mandela, he was a communist. But the people they were facing were pretty bad on their own. So 2 things can be true at once. The ANC can be pieces of shit, and the racist apartheid can be pieces of shit. And then you have millions of people stuck between the two just suffering. So, so the Kufut was a multiracial military unit. The term crowbar came from their understanding of insurgency, to pry the insurgents off the population. They were active in the South African Border War from 1979 until 1989, and they carried out a ton of military operations. And they also did some pretty gruesome activities.
Oh, we love gruesome activities.
Well, these ones were against communists, so it's not a crime. They were controversial. They're controversial because the way the unit was is it was mainly used as half of it was a light infantry unit. So if you can imagine like the Rhodesian light infantry, 3-2 battalion, our recon battalions, Ranger battalion, you imagine that, but these dudes are wearing Daisy Dukes. They're wearing
Like literally?
pretty damn close.
Like went to war in cargo shorts?
They went to war in thigh-high
Like vet bro shorts?
vet bro shorts. Like they
silkies?
Not so much UDT. Like, we're talking like, about right here.
Oh, fuck yeah, banana hammock that shit up.
And they
that makes you more flexible and you can move faster.
aerodynamic.
It makes you aerodynamic.
Yeah. So, they were known as the green boots because they wore a tracking boot that was green. The problem that arose is that you had a bunch of piece of shit communists and you had a police commando unit that had very little oversight. What happens when we have very little oversight?
People tend to fucking overstep.
Go ham. Hell yeah. But overstepping is kind of a misnomer when we're talking about counterinsurgency. There were atrocities that were carried out throughout the apartheid era, and it was terrible. But at the same time, credits due where credits due. Is an amazing counterinsurgency force. They not only did the light infantry aspect of it, but they also developed human intelligence networks and were able to do extremely precise targeting when it came to lethal targeting. So what we would kind of say assassinations.
Yeah.
So when we look over the course of the war, they killed or captured 3,225 insurgents, and they participated in 1,615 individual engagements. So if we say for every op they did, some they would capture, some they would kill, but in every op they were killing or capturing 2 guerrillas. Now, that's not to say when they raided a base camp, they completely slaughtered everybody. A lot of the times they would wind up sending guys in surreptitiously. So I was telling you earlier, I was like, you think a police officer would ever dress up like a Crip or a Blood, or a Navy SEAL would dress up like an ISIS fighter, sneak into their organization, or dress up like a neo-Nazi and sneak into their organization and then just light them up Columbine style?
Yes.
Yes, these guys did that.
The correct answer is yes.
These dudes were able
badass.
to infiltrate and assassinate and then turn a lot of these fighters over. A good chunk of the Kufut operators were former insurgents.
Well, I mean, I don't know much at all about law enforcement, but that's the kind of that we do that here. Like vice units, fucking FBI task force units, like they do the same shit.
So the Kufut was disbanded.
They don't like fucking
murder people.
Yeah, they don't execute people on site, but they insert. I just wanted to make that clear.
They coerced them into storming the Capitol.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
They were disbanded in 1989 because there was a basically peace and reconciliation thing that happened with the apartheid government, and that happened a little bit later. But essentially, South Africa was told, "Hey, you can't keep this. It needs to become its own country," and then it became the country of Namibia. But during the height of the border war, which happened in 1966 and continued to 1989, so that's a little over 2 decades of warfare. When they first started off, it started off with a 40-man unit, and it grew pretty large to where these guys were being able to run their own operations independent of the South African Defense Forces. I say independent, they worked in tandem or conjunction with them, but they had their own command. They also had their own vehicles. This is the advent of the MRAP. It's called a Casper.
I never fucking heard of it.
So,
have any of you guys heard of it? So, let me do the door explorer thing. Have you guys ever heard of it?
Well,
no?
Okay. The freaky thing is it actually started off as moving children. So children had to go
what?
to school. Yeah, children had to go to school.
So it was like a fucking bus?
It was a bus,
An armored bus?
an armored bus.
Did it have guns?
It had guns. Well,
So-
some of the first ones didn't, but they had a V hull.
It'd been a lot cooler if they did.
They had a America. It would be a lot cooler. It'd be a lot cooler if you did a V-shaped hull so that it could essentially withstand landmines. Because
Yeah.
what these communists were doing was making life difficult for fucking everyone. There were poor whites, poor blacks, even poorer blacks, and everybody was just trying to fucking get by. And South Africa was kind of being a bully, I should say, to put it mildly. The South Africans wanted to push even more apartheid on them. Bear in mind that the population they wiped out, the natural population, were the Herero. So the majority of these people only have lived there for about 200 plus years.
Damn.
So they're only like, what, 5 to 6 generations in. So they had African colonization of the Bantu-speaking Ovambo. The Ovambo are like, hold the fucking sauce here. I'm not gonna fucking be anybody's, trying to find a politically correct term, slave.
Nah, I was gonna say, don't worry about politically correct.
Well,
We never care about that on this channel
so
at all.
that could be a problem.
It's a problem for a later time.
So
As all episodes pulled.
I'll be in an orange jumpsuit somewhere going, fuck, I shouldn't have said that. So the people that we were talking about was
Facebook jail.
SWAPO, the Southwest African People's Organization, and they were funded, and their military wing was PLAN, the People's Liberation Army of Namibia. They were funded by the Chinese. They got direct advisors from Russians, and they had actual communist Cubans. And we are talking thousands. They brought artillery, they had boats, they had all these different cool things that a insurgency usually doesn't have access to. So they had all these machine guns, rocket propelled grenades, they had logistics. The problem is the people that they were hiring. When 80% says, I don't want to fucking be a communist, you usually get the 20%, which is like scraping the bottom of the barrel. People that can barely read, people that can barely write. Yeah. Eventually this leads to in the border war with South Africa, where South Africa is literally fucking fighting Cubans. We're talking divisions fighting each other.
Damn.
Yeah, thousands. It was straight up, we could talk a little bit about that, but it was essentially armies fighting each other. They had jets, they had artillery. But what Kofut did was Kofut would go in and they would identify cells, and then they would eliminate those cells. They would do it by any means necessary. So bombing, assassination, forced disappearances. Some of the people they would roll up were just normal people trying to live their life. And the SWAPO guerrillas and the PLAN would do the same exact thing. They'd go and assassinate farmers, they would blow up car bombs, and then they would just make life miserable for everybody on both sides, which, I mean, I don't know. Do you think war is bad?
From a certain point of view.
From a certain point of view. Well, they wanted to prevent it from becoming a full-blown
Star Wars reference.
Star Wars. They wanted to do a counterinsurgency, which is coined, C-O-I-N, and it played a pivotal role in shaping this unit. So these dudes would go out and they would be wearing their Daisy Dukes, their green boots. They would track like the best trackers. A lot of these guys left and went to SADF. Some of the guys came here.
So what you're saying is they went from Daisy Dukes to fighting in dresses and sandals.
Almost.
Insurgents.
Almost. Well,
Sorry. I'm being like, I'm trying to be like the comedic relief here.
But
I don't know shit about this.
believe it or not, a lot of the Border Patrol tracking, like when I was in Scout Sniper School and we got our man tracking class, and it was I was surprised. It was very robust.
How many men did you track?
Oh, I tracked all the men. Well,
You just set it up for me and I'm knocking it down.
Well, one of the things I talked to earlier was that they were police officers and they were police commandos, so they didn't really see themselves as an army. So these guys thought outside the box. They're like, well, I have constables that are black Ovambo that speak the language, that look like them, that act like them. For God's sakes, 80% of the population is on our side. Why don't I just give these guys some tradecraft, give them some tactics, and then have them infiltrate and kill the guerrillas. So it was not unheard of for...
It's like reverse guerrilla warfare.
Well, they would ambush the insurgents, kill them, find people that looked similar to them, dress them in that unit, and then an entire unit, say a squad or a platoon, would then infiltrate these bases.
That's fucking genius.
Then fucking smoke all these commie bastards.
A literal smoke show.
Little smoke show.
Wait, when was this?
This was they started in the late 70s into the 80s. The problem was it was a classified unit.
Yeah.
And it didn't really, what happened is what happens everywhere. You have leftists that get into the news and get into the skew, and they expose things. So South Africa was their main source of support. So what happened is these leftist cucks wound up dropping newspapers saying, hey, there's this special ops unit that's working in Namibia. Then it kind of got brought to the forefront. Now, that's not to say every one of these guys were angels. There's a guy named De Kock, and they called him Kook De Kock.
I'm trying so hard.
So he was cross-eyed, so he wasn't allowed in the military, and he was a psychopath. He was a racist piece of shit. He did, however, have some very interesting methods with how to deal with insurgents, which was he would strap the bodies to the fucking vehicles as they were driving around. So you
like dead or alive?
Both. Like they would strap people to these Unimogs and to these Casper vehicles. So essentially they would send out a tracking team. They would go out, they would track without bringing everything with them. However, they had some aerial assets, but mostly they had these mine-resistant vehicle antiquity. These were the first mine-resistant vehicles built with V-hulls.
Yeah.
They would use them as an assault force. So they would push out guys, they would locate the areas, and then they would bring in ass. They'd bring in the support and fucking lay waste to these dudes. Now, what's the most iconic rifle of like the Rhodesian, South African Bush War, border war?
Is it the FAL?
It is the FAL. The FNFAL.
The right hand of the free world?
Hell yeah, it was. And let me tell you, the Brits created the L1A1, which was, it's a fucking FNFAL. All right. But the other cool thing is these dudes would rock AKs because they had to blend in with the insurgents.
Yeah.
So
why is it that all fucking insurgents use AKs? Well, serious question. I want to know.
Because the communists proliferated. Anybody that said they hated the West, they would give them AKs, which kind of fucked them over because every single weapon that's been used to kill Soviets since, I don't know, after Vietnam has been an AK. I did not see that coming back to fuck with me.
Fuck.
So these mine-resistant vehicles were used in both a direct action and a special reconnaissance role. They used direct action with their constables, so they'd go and do a raid, and they'd set up point ambushes, they would do sweep and clear missions, but they also did so they kill these communist cells. And essentially what came about is you wiped out all these communists, and then Namibia became pretty much communist free. They rolled themselves over. They had the architecture of these insurgents, but at the end of the day, you had a racist white minority government versus communists. So it was like a Timmy and Jimmy's razor fight. You just had two retards fucking going at it. But it's interesting because a lot of their stuff came into other aspects of law enforcement and the military. So tracking and mine-resistant vehicles were born. I shouldn't say born, but really brought to the forefront.
I didn't know much about the MRAPs and the MATVs and shit because I never got to fucking use them. We were still using fucking canvas Humvees. On the occasion, the up-armored one that barely fucking worked.
Well, if you were...
A lot of other units got them, just not us because we had tracks.
If you were to say, I want a bunch of racists fighting communists, do you really pull for either side?
No, you kind of just sit back and relax, grab a beer maybe, and watch it unfold.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So that's the crowbar, the Kufut operators. Cowabunga. I love that. I love that term. Cowabunga. God, we're so dumb. Yeah,
I feel like that's a very unknown fact.
That we had an airborne unit.
Yeah, I want to talk about that too.
Yeah, it's fucking.
Oh, hey guys.
Oh, hello.
All right, guys.
Didn't see you there.
Didn't see you there. We were
Admiring
jerking our gherkin to Marine paratroopers. We're going to talk about that, not next episode, but we're going to talk about that.
I was just looking into your eyes and noticing you have a lush man beard coming in.
I have a goat.
It's a goat.
You know, like the song "Return of the Mac." Return of the goat. Return of the goat. Goatee.
I love you no matter what you say.
All right, guys. So that's going to close it for this episode. For next episode, what are we talking about?
Tank aces.
Both American and German?
Yes, you have to have the light and dark side of the force.
You got to have both.
Yeah.
It has to be balanced.
Balanced. But no fucking communists.
No communist. Was there ever a Russian tank ace?
I'm sure he was killed by Stalin.
Probably.
Yeah.
All right, guys. With that, this concludes episode 17. Daisy Dukes, Communists, and please, Kommandos.
Kommandos with a K.
Kommandos. All right. Any closing notes?
No. As always, fucking really appreciate you and the podcast. And if you guys like, subscribe, leave comments. If you're Russian, don't hate me.
Don't park a sub off the East Coast and fucking target it at us.
Do the normal thing. Send a fucking balloon. Okay.
Yeah, just send a balloon. We'll shoot it
Send a
down.
balloon.
I'll shoot it down with that. Subscribe to the channel, please. Our goal, if hopefully it's not a huge goal, but goal is 200 by the end of the year. If we can reach that before then, we'll celebrate a little bit. Pop some champagne.
I'll be prostituting myself on Instagram, so if you like, I'll give you a hand job. How's that sound?
Blow it and go.
How do you think I got this shirt?
We do still, so we're both rocking the shirts. Black, green, same logos.
Shirt of color.
The shirt of color, sorry.
So bigoted. Damn it. So bigoted.
We're working on some new, like kind of limited run shirts for the different podcast episodes. Like we'll do one that has like some art from like Grozny and like shit like that. So let us know what you guys want to see, and we'll try to make it happen.
Hell yeah.
All right.
Oh.
Cheers.
Appreciate it, guys.
Till next time. Peace in the Middle East.
Cowabunga.
Cowabunga!
What the fuck is a kilometer?
Relax. I just want to take some pictures of you.